Živijo, tukaj je Anže, poslušate podcast Aparatus, kjer legitimni člani družbe povejo, kaj počnejo v življenju.
Stroške gostovanja, spletne strani in vseh fajlov Aparatusa tokrat sponzorira podjetje de-sign, ki se ukvarja z industrijskim in grafičnim oblikovanjem ter oglaševanjem in je na internetu na www.de-sign.si.
Tole pa je 63. epizoda Aparatusa, ki bo zopet v angleščini. Tokrat je z mano govoril Merlin Mann, ki je najbrž najbližji, kar se pride proper zvezdi v podcastih. Gre za človeka, ki ima na Twitterju 300,000 sledilcev in je res pač tako naredil ene par podcastov do zdaj, ki so nekako postali epski, če za nazaj gledamo. Predvsem sem se pogovarjal o enemu, to je You Look Nice Today, ki ga je delal še z 2 človekoma in je res eden mojih najljubših podcastov, se je sicer že zaključil, ampak se ga definitivno splača poslušati. Povezava do podcasta je valjda v zapiskih. Pa so pa še malo govorila o tem, kaj zdaj počne, pa v katerih podcastih zdaj nastopa. Pač Merlin je bil full fine, ne vem že spet, zakaj je z mano govoril, ampak pač je. Naprej začnemo še enkrat, hvala vsem, ki ste Aparatus že podprli oziroma ste mu dali oceno v iTunesih. Če ga hočete podpreti, greste pa na aparatus.si/podpri. Hvala. Evo, zdaj pa Merlin Mann.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah, so were we just both like looking into Skype and waiting for it to be like 9:30 and then
Yep.
like, okay, so that's how it works. Okay, because I was afraid to, I was trying to be punctual and didn't want to bother you.
Not at all. Tell me how to pronounce your name.
Okay, wait, Anže.
Anže.
Yeah, okay, that was, okay. Okay, I'm going to go with that. Okay, say it again now.
Anže?
Well, yeah, okay. You see, you get the A at the end, but it's you have to cut the E off at the end, so it's like Anže.
Anže.
Yeah, okay, that was perfect, basically. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So,
I'll do my best.
Okay, well, I mean, that's more than most people do, so I'm used to it. So as long as I'm not Angie, I'm fine. Because
it's hard to tell, and I'm not familiar with the diacritical marks. I'm not sure what those mean. I'm not familiar. You know what I mean? Usually I can suss it out in Spanish and stuff, but now I'm glad you helped me. That I feel better now.
Yeah, well, it's over here. It's not that complicated since the C with the thing like the little V on top, right? Mm-hmm. That's basically a CH. It's like a ch.
Oh, got it.
Okay, and then the Z, the thing I have in my name.
Yes.
That's a j. That's the one that like Americans and English people usually have a problem with because there's no equivalent really. And then the S with the thing on it is a sh. It's a ch basically. An sh. Sorry.
Okay.
So and that's pretty much all we have. That's as far as we don't have any of those O's with the line through it, which I have no idea what that means also. So
I assume that's a prank or some kind of a test to see if anybody says it differently. That way Danish people can make fun of you if you actually do it.
Yeah, probably. The Scandinavians are weird.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, even I can say that, and I'm European, so. Yeah. Okay, because maybe we already started, maybe we didn't, but okay, this is my first question. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Merlin Mann, and I record podcasts. Next question. What do you mean? That's a weird question. I mean, I know my name, but I make things for the internet. I do podcasts. I sometimes write. Right now, I'm mostly doing podcasts for myself and with other people, and I do a little bit of speaking, public speaking, and speaking at events, but mostly podcasts right now.
So yeah, but like, if you had to like gun to your head, you had to pick you had to write down your occupation. Like, what would that be? And that's as serious I can make that question, but. Because you do like all sorts of stuff, but how would you characterize your work? I'm using air quotes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have to be brutally honest. I absolutely do not think about it that way. Other people do. I do not. I'm happy to do that as an exercise, but it would be purely abstract to me because that's just not how I think about my life. I would say right now, I'm a podcaster, but I also do other stuff. So there's not really a name for what I do, and that's what makes it interesting to me. If I could answer that question too quickly, I'd probably be doing something I wasn't very interested in. I mean, there's a time, for a long time, I called myself a writer because I wrote and published every day. I no longer wrote it every day. But that was what I did for a long time. And I've done different sorts of jobs that I think you could summarize that way. But I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of introducing myself to your audience, I would say people probably know me from things that I've written on the internet or some videos of talks that I've done. Or in the last 2-3 years, they might have heard podcasts I've done, like Back to Work with Dan Benjamin, and Roderick on the Line with John Roderick. You Look Nice Today, Mac Break Weekly, a long time ago.
Oh, you're saying okay.
Well, I mean, what is it? Ask me what you want to know. I'll tell you anything. You're asking me, I mean, it's like, to me, it would be kind of like saying, like that old famous Barbara Walters interview question, like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? I could come up with an answer, but I don't think that does a very good job of explaining who I am.
Okay, so you said you used to write. I used
to write a lot of writings.
Yeah, you're doing it to me now. But so why did that go away for you? Because you basically stopped, really. That Tom blog is not really writing, right? I mean,
no,
not like you used to do it.
No, I stopped because writing's hard.
Well, yeah, but you were sort of good at it. That's why I'm asking. Like,
it's really hard to be good at it.
Okay, so
I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of time. I mean, how much time you got? I'll talk all you want. It's writing. I spent a long time, over a year, trying to write a book that never got finished. So that kind of made writing less fun for me for a very long time. I mean, less fun professionally too, not just less fun as in tee-hee, this is a party, doing some writings. It was also that it became a real grind for me. And at the same time, I started to realize how much of the writing that I had done in the past for things like my website, 43 Folders, I think the audience for that kind of stuff has really changed. And the kind of stuff that people want to read and the kind of stuff that people want to write is increasingly very ephemeral and very high volume, but low. I mean, I'm not sitting around saying I'm, Marcel Proust or something, but I think the kind of writing that people want is that people really do enjoy things like lists of tips and things like that. And I don't enjoy writing things like that. I don't enjoy reading things like that. And I would refer the gentleman back to my former answer. Writing is hard. It's a lot of work. And doing podcasts, I really enjoy doing podcasts. It's very conducive to the way that my mind works, such as it is, and it's much easier and more fun for me to do on a regular basis. I don't like writing to a deadline, so I don't really feel, not that it matters, but I don't really think of myself as a writer right now. I used to think of myself as a writer. I will absolutely think of myself as a writer again when I start writing. It's just that right now that's just not what I want to do. I'm still kind of burning off a lot of the bad energy from that book experience. And plus, I really enjoy doing podcasts, and I get paid to do it, and people enjoy it. So it's kind of a win all around.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you've mentioned before that you don't really like writing to a deadline, and I agree with that. But I write for a magazine, so I do that all the time.
Is that what you do for your job?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Oh, that's so hard.
Yeah. I write for a monthly and a weekly magazine. There's 2 magazines now, and that's sort of okay. If I worked at a daily newspaper, I'd shoot myself probably. Like, I don't know how those guys do it. Like, I could not do that at all. But
I think some people get that in their blood. Well, first of all, I didn't really thank you properly. Thank you for saying that nice thing about I was good at writing. I appreciate that. But I think some people get it in their blood. I mean, in fairness, I never got that part of it. Do you know what I mean by the term? I never got it in my blood.
Yeah.
Where there are people out there who look at a deadline and they get nervous about a deadline, but they never miss a deadline because they couldn't miss a deadline. It would be like somebody who's a physician saying, I'm too sleepy to finish this operation. They would never do that. That's not part of the profession. And I have to say that as much as I have enjoyed being somebody who put words together in paragraphs and published them, I've always hated deadlines, and I've always had almost no respect for deadlines in a way that's been very damaging to me. So I think that's one difference, is in the same way that a doctor would never say, I'm too tired to I'm too tired to finish this operation. Most professional writers would say it's very unprofessional to miss a deadline. They never think, and never in a million years would they miss a deadline. And I just never got that.
Yeah, but see, that's why I don't get how you can do a weekly podcast, because I have a background in radio as well, and that's a different sort of grind, but it's still like there is still that weekly thing in there somewhere, you know? Do you know what I mean? And
I do.
And you haven't, like, I don't know, have you missed a back to work episode? Like barring being ill and stuff, but.
I don't, well, again, I don't really think of it. I mean, it ends up being a weekly podcast because that's how often we record it, which means it's roughly how often we put it out. But yeah, there are certainly episodes, weeks that we've missed. The show began, you can help me with the math on this, but the show began in January of 2011. So in 3 years, we've had almost 160 episodes. So just about one a week. And there's times where we filled in. But in that case, I mean, I can't even begin to compare that to writing. My gosh. Because in that case, there's several things about it. First of all, I mostly just show up and talk.
See, I don't believe that.
Well, no, I'm not sandbagging. I'm being honest. That's the biggest piece. My biggest contribution to that show, if I did nothing else, just showing up and talking is mostly my job. But with that said, I also do things like show notes. I work with sponsors sometimes. I've sometimes gone as far as doing invoicing and stuff like that. But by and large, mostly I do just show up. And then Dan Benjamin at 5x5, his team does the editing and the posting. I do the show notes. So my total amount of prep before the show and work after we've recorded, it ends up being 1 day a week. So it's that, which sounds crazy. If you just listen to us, being silly for an hour and a half, that sounds impossible. But given all the things I do, answering email, talking to people, it probably ends up averaging out to a little under a day a week, all told. Probably less than that, but around that. So, things like show notes. I like this week was kind of weird because my kid was sick and I couldn't do show notes this week for once. But I like doing really good show notes, having lots of links.
Yeah.
I like the idea of somebody visiting the show notes page before they've listened to the episode and having no idea what it could possibly be about.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have OCD as far as that's concerned. Yeah, I have way too many links in my show notes, I think. I don't know.
People love that. People really do love that, though. I have to say sometimes, I don't know, you get a sense in your gut about how much somebody cares about what they're doing. And sometimes I just show up on a page and it's like they couldn't even write even like a one-line description of what the show is. In some cases, like on Roderick on the Line, I don't want to describe it. I want people to have to listen to it to know what's there. I couldn't possibly, I don't know if you ever heard the show, I couldn't possibly describe it. But if it's a show about like, okay, this week we're going to talk about desktop computers. Well, I'd like to see a little bit about, some links to what you talked about. If you talked about some movies, maybe link to the script and things like that. For the people who really enjoy your show, they will appreciate that. For people who don't, it doesn't matter. But for the people who do, I think they really enjoy seeing that. So you look at somebody like the guys that are doing Technical Difficulties right now, that podcast, they have one guy who does nothing but show notes. He does exhaustive show notes that are really almost like their own performance. It's really super cool. If you look at, I think it's technicaldifficulties.us. They have a great site.
Awesome. Yeah, but I guess it depends on the type of show you do anyway. Because I think like a back-to-work type show, needs show notes. But like linking to anything like John Roderick says is, I don't know. I mean,
I used to. Here's the thing: if you go back and look at somewhere after the first episode, but up to somewhere probably around the 10th episode, it blew my mind. I would sometimes spend 4 or 5 hours on show notes because I got so into it. Listening to the show, I would try to find a link to every video, to every quote, to everything I could find until we would have a couple or 4 dozen links for every episode, and it just got to be way too much work, and I hated it. Hated stopping it, but I thought this is only probably fun to me and the 4 people that listen to this show.
Well, there's more than 4 now, right? I mean,
well, my wife doesn't listen, but if I can get John to listen to the show, we'll have 5 listeners. So.
Okay, so I want to talk about you look nice today for a minute because that. I'm gonna be complimentary now, and I know you hate that, but like,
I'm gonna love it. I love You Look Nice Today. Say all the nice things you want. I love that show.
No, but that show was ahead of its time. That's such a crappy way to put it, but I'll say it anyway. Was ahead of its time, but not just like the way it was done and you 3 talking about stuff. But that show was way better produced than podcasts deserved at that time, if that makes sense.
It does. I know what you mean, and I felt it. Adam's work in editing that show.
Yes.
I mean, there had certainly from the dawn of recording, there have been shows where white guys sit around and talk about nothing or poop. That's existed forever. But the way Adam in time, Adam always edited the show. It's just that the way there were certain weeks where what he did with that show was a little bit magical, either in terms of just moving bits of dialogue around, cutting off, making something extra funny by taking out a pause or adding a pause, by having us not talk over each other. And then at one point when he started adding in little bits of music and dialogue from things, not to where you could ever expect it. It wasn't like watching Family Guy or something. But there would be these moments where he would, just drop in the most improbable things. Dom DeLuise laughing, an orchestra tuning up, something, and you just go like, what? And the show suddenly became a very different show when he started doing that.
Yeah, that makes me angry. Like, that's magic to me. Like,
I know, it's frustrating. Isn't it frustrating?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it just makes me physically angry every time I listen to that show. And I have like a commute now where I actually spend like a half an hour on a bus every day to and from work. And I still have all of the You Look Nice Today episodes downloaded. And I just play random ones. And it still makes me angry how that thing's edited. It's like, but you know how Radiolab is basically perfect every time? Right.
Are you talking about Jad Abumrad's radio? Let's try again. I don't think so. Let's go back one more time. Radio Lab.
Yeah,
that
but
show?
but Radiolab feels like it's meant to be like that because they are actually on the radio. Like
also Jad Abumrad. I mean, he's a musician, a recording engineer. Like he's an artist of. Some of the shows really wouldn't be the show if he didn't do something amazing with the sound. It would just be another NPR piece. But what I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he's so gifted at doing that. He really has an ear for that,
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But it sort of feels at home when stuff like that happens, when there's sort of, old school radio involved. But you guys, it's just like three guys, and then Adam Lissiger did that. Like, it feels like I get angry. That's all I'm trying to say.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, oh man, because every time I listen to that show, it's like, wow, that was funny and snared and all that stuff, right? But I've gone through it about like twice now, probably like all the episodes, and like on the second hearing, I just listen for the edits now.
Is that right?
I sort of know the plot, sort of. Well, the plot, that's putting it strongly. But like, I sort of know what you guys are going to talk about. I just listen to what he did with that show now.
I don't blame you. He's a real gifted guy. And, it's been long enough now that I'm more comfortable mentioning this. I would never say this while we were doing the show because I didn't want to, make Adam feel bad. But when we would say things like, people would say, oh, why don't you put it out more often? And we'd say, well, we're busy. And say, well, no, why don't you put it out more often? Well, Adam's really busy. Well, why don't you put it out more often? Well, Adam spends a lot of time with each episode. And people would say, why don't you put it out more often? I said, listen, Adam has spent double-digit numbers of hours on a single episode of You Look Nice Today. You God bless you, the listener. You sit there and whoop that thing down like a piece of freaking chocolate. Adam spent like half a week working on that episode. And not every episode, not every single one, but he would listen and re-listen. He'd do an edit. He'd go back. Might do three passes at it. And it sounds like you have a personality where you would understand this, where like, it could be better. It could be stronger. You take a day off, you come back, you do more. You can't put out an episode a week like that and have a job. That's not possible.
Yeah. And in terms of that felt like, good writing to me. The whole taking more passes at it and then like doing proper editing, where there's like, it's a craft. It sort of has the feel of like an object at the end, not just something three people said into a microphone.
I agree with you. There's that old cliche that, whatever, I'm going to make a classic You Look Nice Today error that, Michelangelo starts with a piece of, stone. And I think it's actually the first joke ever made on the show. Michelangelo's Daniel. No, you take a block of stone and you chip away everything that's not David. Which, that's really funny. But there's something about when you're really in the groove with creating something and you've been productive for a while and you're putting out, whether this is magazine articles or whether it's, podcasts or whatever it is that you really get your game on and you get good at it. And I think you develop a certain, for lack of a better word, velocity about what you're doing. And you get really good about knowing whether it's ready yet in a way that you can't put your finger on. And I've definitely felt that when I think I'm writing well, where I know that there's this place where, okay, it's still too early. I know this is I still feel too much about what I wrote here. So it's not ready to go out yet. I need to feel this a little bit less. I need to read it a lot more. I need to realize somewhere in here there's a lot of something I can probably cut out or clarify. There's always something in there that I could cut out or clarify. The hardest part, right? Yeah. And then at the end, like, how do I sew it all together and not in too cute a way? How does it end in a way where you understand why I began it in the first place? So that if you went back, like I had 50 times, and reread it from the beginning, you'd see the circle. You'd see how this it has a sense of, I don't know, just when you're creating that and you're doing that well and your brain is functioning in a way that's satisfying, you just know whether it's ready yet. And then you also, but on the other hand, as you know all too well, given your vocation, there is also a moment where you go, you know what, I could spend 10 more years editing this and it would only get 2% better, and tick tock, let's get this thing out.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I think anything like someone writes or even like does sort of, if you try your best at it, that's when you release it. When it gets to that, if I've spent like 20 more hours on this, it's going to get 1% better. And then you just say, well, this is it basically. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like that's so deflating at the end maybe, but yeah, I think that's.
It is. And also for me, like, I only, if I'm not loving what I'm writing, I don't feel like writing. I like stuff that I've written. I like it a lot. What's funny is I start out feeling something very strongly. I find a way to say a lot of it. I start to really, really like what it is that I've written. And because I feel like I don't know if this makes sense, but when you're writing something like an essay rather than say a straight, in your case, I don't know what kind of stuff you'd write about. If you're writing about a sports event or a play, like that's a certain kind of writing. In this case, this is a kind of personal essay writing. And I know, like, something I didn't even realize I felt or didn't realize I felt so strongly. Like I realized that and got it mostly onto a page. And then B, I realized that I'm getting close to getting this where I want it to be to say what I didn't realize I wanted to say. And I start to really like it, what I've written. And then I edit it more and I start to hate it. And that's kind of important to me. Like I really hate it, but realize I have to finish. Not hate it, but I'm like, oh, God, this is so lame. But I want that feeling back. And when I start to hate it less and I start to realize that it might sound sane and have a voice and a rhythm to the words, then I'm like, okay, stop, put it up, quit. Otherwise I could just go to committee forever and I'll start to hate it again.
Yeah, and then the cycle repeats, basically. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so if Adam sort of was the guy that edited the show mostly, right? And you were Merlin on there, or whatever that means.
Is that who I played?
Yeah, I think you were Merlin. I think that's how it works. But who the hell is Scott Simpson then? Like, what? I mean,
I think I've told people this before, but after that show, in some ways, is a lot like what I just described with writing, where I could tell when that show. I couldn't tell when we were recording it, but you just get a few minutes into an edited episode, and I go, oh, this is gonna be a pretty good one. Like I can tell this is going places, and over time you get 20, however many. I don't know how many episodes of the show we did, but you get to where I started to have this mental picture of what the three of us looked like. And I always thought if there was ever a visual representation of that show, I don't know if you've ever seen what's called squiggle vision. If you see like Dr. Katz Professional Therapist, or if you've ever seen like Home Movies, that animated show, that kind of nervous style of animation. I always imagine a squiggle vision version animated of the three of us dressed in like short sleeve shirts with clip-on ties, sitting around a table that's a little bit too small, like awkwardly small. We're like a little too close to each other, having a meeting that somebody smarter should probably be at, led by Scott. So I imagine Scott leading some kind of a meeting where the really important person who called the meeting ended up not being there, and three people who are not sure why they're at the meeting have to still have the meeting. And there's something important to figure out, but we're not sure what it is.
Yeah, and there's like a chart with a graph that's going down.
Yeah, we start drinking, we have some coffee, and then pretty soon the meeting is going someplace we never expected, and we kind of hope the person who called the meeting never learns what we talked about. But Scott was I always very much thought of Scott as in terms of the little universe of the recorded show. I think I always thought of Scott as the one leading the meeting.
Okay.
And Scott was absolutely, hands down, the funniest person on the show. I think he was absolutely there would be no show. He was like the Paul McCartney of the show. He kept it all together, and I still think he's an extremely funny guy. But basically Scott would come in, and thank you for talking about this. I miss that show a lot. I really do. But Scott would come in, and, we never knew what was going to come up. Scott would have some ideas jotted down. I've never really known how much Scott...
there were no, like, in terms of prep, like, you didn't have, like, a shared Google Doc. Oh, okay.
No prep.
Okay.
We have exactly...
Oh, that makes me so angry.
There's one edit. There's one edit on that show for content because we thought we could do something better. I will never say what it was. One time we redid one thing on the show, and I feel dirty. And there's exactly one piece of prep that I can remember ever in the future, in the history of the show, which is my favorite live show we did, I think it's called 3 is the Magic Number, where we were performing live, and Scott and I were staying in basically a hotel room together. And we're backstage drinking, getting ready to come out. And Scott says, okay, Merlin, when we go out there, I'm going to tell a story. Don't act like, don't say it didn't happen. Just play along. And I was like, okay, let's go. And that's the single amount of prep I'm aware of that we've ever had for the show.
That makes me so angry.
Oh, and so we went out, and then Scott went into this amazing story about the housekeeper, him yelling at the housekeeper.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That just no, because that show, I don't know, man. This is like really fanboyish of me, but because I've seen stuff like that happen from time to time, and like I don't know that one always, like, in terms of podcasts, that's why I said it was ahead of its time. That show shouldn't have existed at that point in time. Like, maybe now I can see somebody doing something where, like, just podcasts have sort of they're at least 5 years old now. Like, if they were a child, they feel like they're like a person now. Whereas when you guys were doing it, they were sperm, basically.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way to put it. I imagine it was existing. It's probably something like the development of calculus. There were probably people around the world, except not as smart. There's, people were discovering calculus independently at more or less the same time around the Earth. But with us, it was. I mean, I really don't mean this to sound snotty. I hope it doesn't. But when I say it's not as easy as it looks, I don't mean it's not hard to do. What I mean is, like, one of the great compliments that we would get from that show, I felt, from people who enjoyed the show, would say, well, it reminds me of me and my friends when we sit around and joke about stuff. And it's true. I mean, that really is because that's kind of what it is. It is really just 3 friends joking around. And it isn't like we brought any like great amount of art to it, but it is a little bit harder than it looks. And sometimes when I hear folks who are doing a similar thing, it doesn't move me in the same way, maybe because I feel like I've heard it before, but also it really helps to have somebody like Adam there doing that editing and shaping it. It helps to have somebody like Scott there to keep things on an even keel and to worry about whether we're even tangentially just talking about the same thing for more than 5 seconds. And I mean, to toot my own horn, to have somebody like me there who's not afraid to pull in something completely like inappropriately random that will, screw things up. Or in the case of Adam, somebody who's as low key as Adam, to come in and just like Adam would just bring the house down with the most like understated little thing, like mentioning that he had a fanny pack when he was a kid, or like, why is it so funny to imagine Adam dressed up as a clown dancing on stage or whatever? Like, it's just funny. Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's hard to do, but it's, I think a lot of us would like to think that, we watch something like, what's the first big Tarantino movie? The heist movie.
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, we'd like to imagine that when we sit around with our friends at Denny's in our black suits, like we sound like that. And you don't. Yeah. Like, you don't actually sound like that. Like, and, so when people say that, I take that as a big compliment. And as far as the fanboy stuff, dude, like, I'm the biggest fanboy of that show ever. I'm so happy to have been there for that thing getting made.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun to do. It's not to be all Merlin Mann, but like I think sometimes like people, it's one thing to be modest and another thing to be a dumbass. So like the thing is that was actually a really, really good show, and I'm proud to have been involved in that show. It would be silly for me to go, oh, I don't know, it's really, oh, thank you for saying that, but blah blah, because it was actually really good. And if you if you're not as excited about what you're doing as I am about what I'm doing, you should do something else. I get to be this way because I actually like what I do. That's, if that sounds self-involved, I'm totally okay with that, because if I had to spend 5 years or 3 years or 20 years working on something that I wasn't happy to tell people I love doing, I would know it's time for a change.
Yeah, see, and the other thing is you three had what I call like radio chemistry, which I mentioned to Mike and Matt on Bionic, that they had that. And they actually mentioned my name on the Queendom episode, which was where you sort of, I think, started listening to Bionic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't think people that do podcasts or radio in general, but maybe like in podcasts, don't really know how rare that is. To have like more than one person talking into a mic and have them gel, and have them sort of have that vibe of just friends talking. That's impossible to fake, basically. Like every terrible show I've heard where there's been 3 people on it, it has like mainly failed on that front. Like just hearing it sort of be fake, if that makes sense. And Matt and Mike are awesome at it. Like I don't know, those guys are in love anyway, but like they that makes so much sense in the same way that you three sort of made sense, if you know what I mean. Like,
I think I do. I have a very really informal and incomplete theory about what makes something like that work. And one part of it is it does help to have chemistry. It helps to have a relationship with the other person where you being yourself and them being themselves in whatever on-air way that is. Like, you understand your character on that show. You understand their character on that show. And you know how... I mean, chemistry can be something very natural, but it's also that chemistry comes out of having talked to somebody a lot or worked with somebody a lot or having done a lot of improv would be one example. But something where you've gotten good at being able to maybe not anticipate what that person's going to say, but to be able to greatly expand on what they've been talking about without derailing it, for example. But that's one part of it. But there's another part of it that is very difficult to put your finger on, but I know it when I see it. And
yeah.
Well, which is the second part is, in the case of, let's say, just a podcast, to keep it simple, or a radio show, it needs to be its own little universe. So the thing is, like, the shows that I really like a lot, I mean, I'm not like perfect at this, but compared to a lot of people, I don't use the word podcast very often while I'm recording the podcast, because I don't want you to think about the fact that you're listening to a podcast. Yes, I know you're listening to a podcast, but if I kept talking about the podcast that we're on while we're doing the podcast and the podcasting of the podcast, if I talked about that all the time, I'm not, unless it fits the chemistry and the universe, it's going to be it's gonna take you out of the illusion that you're in this world.
Yeah, it gets to be jarring almost. Like.
Well, I mean, and the two examples that I feel like I've had good fortune to be involved with that have been successful there are very much You Look Nice Today. It's a little universe. When you go into one of those episodes, you start wandering around and have no idea how you're going to get out of that. Like but you're like not unhappy that you're in it. You're not sitting there going like, has this been 20 minutes? You don't know how long it's going to be. You don't know what it's going to be about, but it's like a little fantastic, like Lord of the Rings kind of world where there are these characters in it and you're watching them do things and moving through it. But it's one reason, like, I was never into having ads on that show because it would have destroyed the illusion of that being a universe. It sounds really silly, and I think the other one is Roderick on the Line, where Roderick on the Line, not quite as much, but still, it's hard to know what any given show is going to be about. It's like a little terrarium of a certain kind of activity that you get to peer in on for a certain amount of time. But, we're not going to be necessarily like waving back at you that much. Like, we're over here doing a performance in this little world. And anyway, it's hard to describe. But so, I guess what I'm saying is, like, to try and generate something like that sort of a show from what you have sitting around, you could try to manufacture chemistry, which can sometimes work. But it rarely
never
work
works.
if you're too well. It'll rarely work if you're too self-aware about the fact you're trying to make that kind of podcast. Disappear into that show and don't talk about the fact that of what it is. Like, let it turn into whatever it's going to turn into, and you'll know if it works or not. Mm-hmm. But to me, that's one reason those two shows in particular, Roderick on the Line and You Look Nice Today, of the things I participated in, still feel very special to me, because you can go back to any of those episodes and listen to them again. You can kind of tell when they were recorded sometimes. If we mentioned that Blockbuster just went out of business, you can probably guess when we recorded it. Or if John's talking about, someday Keane, the band Keane, won't be as popular anymore, and you'll go, oh, that's back when Keane was popular. But they exist out of time in some ways. The stories that John tells are kind of timeless.
Yeah.
So anyway, the universe theory is just something obviously I have not thought about a whole lot, but I can tell when it's working because I don't think, oh, here's some guys doing a podcast.
Yeah,
if I can disappear into their little world for a while and not be like torn out of that by realizing that they are constantly announcing they're doing a podcast, that's magic to me.
Yeah,
it's more like drama. It really is more like a little play.
Yeah, building that mythology sort of has to. You just have to let it happen. If you're too aware of it, I think, it sounds fake almost. I don't know.
And it becomes like a bad TV show, like trying to generate a catchphrase. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but where's my pants? What happened? I can't do my work. Like you can come up with. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, A Mighty Wind.
I had. Chris Guest, yes.
Okay. But also, God, Fred Willard in that, playing the guy who had been the child actor. What is it? What happened? Is that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's what happened.
I can't do my work.
Okay, I actually wanted to ask you about the TV you watched, like, in your life and actually liked, because I don't know, I think there's a mentioning Chris Guest with Spinal Tap and stuff, but I sort of feel like you're the type of guy that liked MASH and maybe, like more recently The Office, the English version and stuff like that. Can you name 3 shows that you actually liked a lot in your life? And you can pick any 3, but 3. I know that's a stupid question, but that's something I really want to know about you, because I've never heard you talk about it.
3 shows I watched as a kid that tell you a lot about who I am, or
just
general?
Throughout your life, you had to pick 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I did watch MASH. I mean, I guess Monty Python, like everybody. It's hard to say. I mean, the things. I guess I'm going to answer it in the way that I suggested. Oh, when I was a kid, right? Yes, okay. MASH. Absolutely, I watched MASH. Mary Tyler Moore, all those kinds of CBS shows from when I was a kid. I don't know. I always liked comedy until I got to be a dumb teenager. I always liked more grown up kind of comedy. I would watch Bob Newhart when I was 8 and thought it was funny, even though I probably didn't actually understand what was happening a lot of the time. I really liked that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed Spinal Tap. I love that movie.
Well, it's the movie. I mean, that's another one of those things that shouldn't have happened, but happened somehow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that turned out as well as it did.
Well, yeah, and when you hear they threw away, I don't know, they shot 3 hours of it, right? And it's an hour and 10 or whatever it is. That sounds even I don't know how they did that. You see, I get angry at that too.
I can't believe that they came up with something like a story out of all of that improvising, not even knowing which parts they were going to be throwing out.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing that they were able to come up with something that actually did have kind of a story to it.
Yeah, I heard Chris Guest, in an interview, talk about that he just shoots stuff and then he can make 7 movies and he picks the best one. Something along those lines. He can make 7 different stories basically with the stuff they get from the shoots. And then he just sort of picks the one that he likes the most, I guess. Which is a crazy way to work, really. But, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's definitely some common themes that, he sometimes does better or more humanely than other times. But, it's always sort of like an unself-aware rubes trying to be better than they are, that I think he could be kind of mean about that stuff sometimes. But something like Waiting for Guffman. I mean, I think Waiting for Guffman is just a tremendous movie. I think that it's got so much humanity to it in a way that maybe, I don't know. I like Best in Show too. I like that. I like all those movies.
But I know what you mean, because Guffman it's more of a movie than a Chris Guest movie. that makes sense. It's more, I see. I think I get what you mean. Yeah. Because that sort of makes. And the other pop culture thing I wanted to ask, because I don't know, in a recent episode of Back to Work, I think you guys talked about Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Which is, how come nobody's seen that movie?
Because I always the studio has done less than nothing to promote it, and they don't.
Oh, okay.
For a long time, they didn't want people to see it. It only screened just a very few times ever.
Because I always had this feeling that everybody saw it, because over here everybody pretty much torrented it. And like, at least in my group of friends, like everybody's seen that movie. And like when you talked about it, it was like this undiscovered gem that like it was hidden away for 20 years or something. And I did not understand that.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't seen it. I mean, obviously people who like Mike Judge stuff have sought it out. But it's, I don't think Fox has gone out of their way to make it easy to find.
Well, yeah, I can maybe see that, but it's a good movie. So.
Well, no, just read the Wikipedia entry. You'll get all of this. I mean, they did not like all of the anti-corporate stuff. They just thought it was pretty insulting to, middle class America, I guess. I don't know. I thought it was great. I loved it. I mean, it's silly at parts, but I thought it's just one laugh after another.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I get to be, a foreigner laughing in America. I think that adds something to that movie. Mm-hmm. For like, if you're not American, I think it's even funnier because
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so, and then there's another thing I wanted to ask you from the Back to Work stuff, Florida, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how? I'm just gonna ask, how bad is it actually? Like,
it's not as bad.
It's not as bad, right? I mean, that can't all be just,
Dan, I can't tell sometimes when Dan's joking. I mean, I think most people, I have to guess, have a real mixed relationship to wherever they spent their formative years. And, at the time I lived there, very, very few people in Florida were born in Florida. I think that's still very much true today. But it was a retirement community that I lived in, and it was just a really terrible place to be a teenager. Yeah. And I was a very unhappy, not very financially secure kid. It was terrible, and and there's a lot about Florida that's a microcosm for what happens in America. It's a place where there's a lot of service industry jobs when there are jobs, and there's a lack of growth, and there's not much money being put into schools, and it's a really frustrating place to live. But I mean, there's great people everywhere. I mean, I think we sometimes exaggerate it for comic effect, but I don't hate Florida at all. And I would not want anybody who I'm pals with in Florida to think I hate the state. But there's a lot about it that's irrefutably weird and dumb. There's a lot. I think I'm sorry to say that there are some things there that I have never seen anywhere else in the world that are a little bit idiocracy-like. That, by no means does that mean that the millions of people that live in Florida are all dumb. But, it's... I don't know. It's
just weird looking from the outside, because I've never been there. Like, the only place I've been is like in New York, which is not really America, I guess.
Nope, it's much more like Europe.
Yeah, that's what I usually say. It's Europe with Americans in it. But like when I listen to those Florida episodes, I was like, you can imagine how that sounds to somebody that's not from the States, right? I mean, that just sounds like that's the worst place on earth, basically. And and it's funny, but
think about somebody from Kazakhstan who sees Borat, and on the one hand, think about that. I mean, on the one hand, they're going to go, "Wow, yeah, what a jerk! Yeah. What a horrible way to exaggerate the problems of this impoverished place." But on the other hand, he went, "Wow, he really nailed that." There's probably parts where he went "Yeah, it's pretty weird." And that's kind of I think how it is with Florida. I think. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about it. I mean, you could see it for yourself. I would never want to try to make somebody especially somebody I don't know, make them feel bad about themselves just because of where they live. It's hard. The injuries that you feel that you incurred when you were a teenager or a child are very difficult to get over. Even if you heal from those little wounds, there's still some part of you, I think, that's always feeling wounded about that. So, I think there's a reason a lot of people decide to become millionaires and buy 50 Rolexes in life, or a plane. They're doing that because they're still fighting something that happened to them when they were 8 years old, probably. Somebody pushed them into a locker because they had dirty clothes, and now they're going to have more Rolexes than anybody. I think that's a little bit Freudian, but I think it's kind of true. I think that's how stuff works. So on the one hand, I would not begin to apologize for being miffed about the deliberately stupid indignities that I had to suffer living in Florida. But on the other hand, I would not want to just castigate the whole state. It's not anywhere I would want to live again. But it's got a lot of wonderful people and wonderful stuff. And, fortunately in America, there's dumbasses everywhere. So really anywhere you go, there's plenty you're talking to one of them right now. I mean,
that was a quote for the tourist board. Yeah.
America, there's dumbasses everywhere.
Okay,
extra big ass fries.
Well, sorry. Okay, and then another thing I sort of when I try to explain you to people, I try to explain what you.
Why would you do that? Why would you try to explain me to someone?
No, because I usually tell people because I do podcasts now and people know me for that, and they say give me a couple of podcasts I should listen to, right? And I give them Radio Lab, and I weirdly I never mention You Look Nice Today. I keep that one to myself, which is wrong, but that's my selfish little. But it's gonna get out after this episode anyway. So, but then I always mention Back to Work, and people are usually intrigued. What's that about? And I sort of want to explain to them how the getting things done stuff, what that is, and then I say there's a bunch of stuff about comic books that nobody understands over here, except for 3 people.
That sounds like a fantastic recommendation.
Yeah, no, but the thing is the getting things done. I love that stuff, that whole productivity angle you do, but you actually do it in a non-douchey way, and I
Thanks.
think. No, but that's I'm being serious because
I am too. I appreciate you saying that. That if I felt like I was doing it in a douchey way, I would kill myself.
No, but you're the only one. Do you know what I mean? If I try to explain to somebody that doesn't know who you are and what you do, and I say, he sort of does, advice for for the workplace or just getting stuff done in life, and they just think of all of those crappy life coach / motivational speaker. That's the image me explaining it usually conjures up, right? And I don't know how to combat that, so help me with that. Just how would you describe what you do there in a normal way?
I don't.
Yeah,
I can't. I mean, it's not that complicated to anybody who listens to it. You go, it's Merlin talking about life stuff. But I don't recommend our show to anybody. It's people find it and they like it, and that's great. But it's again, I don't want to make something that's easy to explain. If it was too easy to explain, I would know that I'm doing the wrong thing. Well, I'll say for myself what I like about that show, or what I like about doing that show. A couple things. First of all, in a completely selfish way, it helps me to talk about stuff that I struggle with. It helps me to talk about things that, let me put it this way. There are some things in life where we would like to believe, I know this is true for liberals in America, we would like to believe that if everybody had enough information, everybody would make great decisions all the time. Well, history has shown us that is not true. All of the information that's been available throughout history has always been available in the United States to everybody, but everybody's still not all that smart and making great decisions. Information is not the problem. The problem in some ways is, even with, look at how many people out there who want to be productive, do nothing but inhale productivity information all day long and never get better at it. Because information in that instance is not the problem. It's making some kind of a leap from changing how you think and feel, not just merely changing. You have to change how you think and how you feel, and you have to change how you make decisions and do things. And those are completely unrelated things. There are a lot of people who sit around feeling bad about their health, and they feel bad, and then they eat a bag of potato chips and they feel worse, and making them feel worse. Does that make them want to get in shape? No, it makes them eat another bag of potato chips, because that's how our brains work. I'm not being disparaging. I'm just saying that's how it works, and that's what's different, and that's what's hard to understand. So for me, I'm smart enough to know what I should do a whole bunch of the time. I'm even smart enough to know, like, in the best of ideal circumstances, what I would be doing. But I don't do it because I'm like everybody else. I'm a fucked up mess, just like everybody. And it helps me a lot to be able to try and address, first of all, that this exists. The most important thing I'll have to say ever is that be aware that there's this thing there that seems like such an obvious non-problem that you need to really be aware that it is a really non-obvious huge problem, which is that the way that we think does not, and the way that we feel does not always comport with how we'd like to behave, how we'd like to be, what we want our future to be. And I don't think you have to go study psychology, and get a PhD in psychology to understand this. You look at it all the time. I know what I should be doing, but I'm not always doing it. Why is that such a difficult thing? And I think that is really kind of almost never ending in its interestingness to me. Like I know, I feel like I am kind of I don't know if I'm smart. I feel like I'm clever sometimes. So if I am that clever, like, why can't I make that leap on a more consistent basis? Well, isn't it a funny thing? There's lots of people who have that exact same problem. So part one, it helps me to talk about that. And I have discovered, it took a while, but in one reason, to go back to the very beginning, why do I like podcasts more than writing? Speaking about this, I'm very comfortable speaking about this, up to a certain point where it gets maybe too personal or something, but up to a certain point, I'm very comfortable talking about this because this is how I figure it out, right? So even right now, I'm sitting here figuring this out as the words are coming out of my mouth. That's hard to do when you're writing, and that's conducive to hear. But here's the second part, and this is back to the douchey problem.
Yeah,
is that I realized this early-ish. In my career, trying to be helpful with people, is that in order to be a self-help person, you only have a job if people stay broken. You only have a job for as long as people need that help. And so does it seem weird to anybody that all of these people who have the answer to happiness and health and success in life have 10 books? Think about that.
Yeah.
Like, how is it the one book didn't work? The one book should have taken care of that. The one book should be take care of the problem. Don't buy any more books because now you're fixed. So when the part that I hope is interesting and keeps it interesting to people is that, like, I want you to not need this advice, but I want you to enjoy hearing it. And I want you to be able to do the stuff that you want to do and still be able to, like, get a trickle of this and enjoy. I want you to listen to the show because it's fun. But I like the idea that me talking about stuff that's hard for me to do can be helpful for you too. And every day my inbox is filled with people who tell me that. And that is why we keep doing the show. That, and we get paid to do it. But, we doing the show, we do it because, like, all this dumb stuff coming out of my head is the same dumb stuff that just hasn't yet come out of somebody else's head, but it's there. And when they hear somebody else say it, and maybe in a way that's funny sometimes or is difficult to reject because it's so obvious, maybe for that week or maybe for 3 days, they'll be better at that thing because they didn't let their smartness overtake the thing that they'd like to be doing differently. So that's why I think that show's different. Now, how do I describe it to somebody in a sentence? I don't.
Fair enough, man. I want more people to hear it. So, that's why I figured I'd just ask you.
It's so annoying.
Yeah.
It's such an annoying show.
Yeah.
I don't think it's what people tune in for.
Well, yeah, but the douchiness angle is sort of, that's the biggest hurdle, I think, when people hear just the word productivity or, betterment.
Like, you wouldn't, like, if you were a big lard ass, you wouldn't go to the gym and say, hey, look, I'm a big lard ass. I need to hire somebody to make me less of a lard ass. And then you hire this guy who, like, is in a scooter because he's so heavy. Like, or, you think you can, tell that story any way that makes sense to you. You want to quit smoking, and so you go to a guy who's in an iron lung. Like, that doesn't make sense on the face of it. But, there are certain times where it helps to know that the person who's working with you has had the same struggles that you have. And for myself, like, when I meet somebody who acts like everything's fine all the time and is smiling broadly and shoving a book into my hand, like, I'm very likely to just reject that because you're right. Douchey is one word for it. It's there's no room for the human soul in that kind of help to be somebody who's just, whose whole success in life depends on you seeing them as being flawless. Like, I have no interest in that for very practical reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was okay. The no room for the soul is a great way to put it. Yeah. So you see that's a Merlin quote basically. Okay. Before we move to the last part of the show, where I ask you about your hardware and your software, which you bear with me. But just one more thing, when you do the public talks and even the podcast, when you are talking to an audience, have you ever had a problem with that at the beginning? Like, were you one of those people that were just terrified because people were listening, or were you like one of us and just did not care enough to worry about that?
I wouldn't say I didn't care, but it's, of all the many things that I'm racked with anxiety about, public speaking is not really one of them. I hope that I do well, and sometimes I get frustrated that I'm not clear about what I wanted to say. And sometimes if I'm not doing talks as often as at other times, like if I'm doing talks a lot, I get good at it, like anybody, right? I mean, whether that's driving to work or, getting good at flipping cable channels. Like if I speak enough, I stay good at it, but I think I get rusty and then I get frustrated. And it makes me want to overhaul everything I do. But now one way in which I am really pretty different from other people is I'm not really afraid of. I enjoy it. Yeah. As somebody who may or may not have ADD, like the idea of someone coming to me and throwing me a challenge on the spot is incredibly enticing to me. Like, so far, have I backed down from any weird thing you've asked me? I love it. It gives me clarity. Like, throw anything at me. I don't care. What do you want me to speak about? Sure. Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that. How long do you want me to go? I enjoy that. I don't feel, of all the many ways in which my ego and sense of self is incredibly threatened by the world, that's actually not one of them, which is, I think, unusual. Most people are extremely worried about public speaking. They say it's, in America anyway, they say it's the only fear greater than death in terms of number of people having it as their number one fear.
Okay.
Nope. I'm fine. I hope my slides are good, but no, I'm not worried.
Okay. So now we will move to your hardware and software. So,
my hardware and my software. My hardware is so hard and my software is supple.
I know you hate talking about this stuff.
Oh my gosh, you kidding me? You should see what I have done with my computer.
Okay, but you were on MacBake Weekly for a long time. So you
Am I now?
Well, no, but you have to bear with me at least. Okay, so I'll just ask, computer
No, I
and
am
phone.
kidding. Ask anything you'd like. I'm happy to answer any way that I can.
Okay, so computer and phone, that's it. That's all I want to know.
Okay, so here's what I got. I have a 2006 Mac Pro that is really old and will not run a modern operating system, so I need to replace that. The computer that I'm speaking to you on right now is a 2010 MacBook Air that I love, and still feels really fast. The battery's starting to go a little bit, but it's still the fastest computer I've ever owned. I love it. I have an iPhone 5S when it's up and not crashing, which I think it's about an hour a day. I get about an hour a day between crashes. And I've got my other go-to is a first-generation iPad mini that I love. And then we've got tons of other iOS devices and Macs around the house, Apple TV and stuff like that. But most of what I do oddly enough, when I'm not recording a podcast, I'm usually on my Mac Pro at work, which I think I'm going to have to replace with an iMac pretty soon. And then when I'm doing podcasting or doing stuff at home, I'm using this MacBook Air. And then I spend a lot of the day, honestly, on I love my iPad Mini, and I want to love my iPhone 5S.
I love it every time you say that about the iPhone, because I'm an Android guy. Like at heart. And
I was in a bar. We had a comic meetup. A bunch of people who are fans and friends came and showed up last Thursday night. We were in a bar, and I was making a joke about my phone and how it's always crashing. And they're like, "Oh my God, me too." And I just kind of as a joke, I opened it up. I did a quick flick through the little app changer.
Yeah.
And I was looking down for a second. I looked up at everybody in the room. I held up my phone and showed them the white apple as my phone restarted. Just like I've said, people are incredulous. All my friends are like, no way does it crash that much. I'm like, no, seriously, it really, really, really crashes that much. It's not jailbroken. It's not anything. It's just broken. Anyway.
Okay, so in terms of software, yes. I guess I guess I'm interested in the more of the iPad specific apps. Like if you get the ones you actually use and that iPad specific. Like I won't bore you with the iPhone stuff, but like
it's fine. I'm happy to talk about any of those. Let's see, ones I use a lot. Tweetbot. Okay, stuff on the home screen, which actually does kind of reflect stuff I use on my iPad. Is that most of what you're interested in? Yeah. Let's see. I use Reader for RSS stuff. Editorial for text files. Tweetbot, 1Password, OmniFocus, Instacast. I like Calendars 5 and Fantastical, both for calendar stuff. I use those a lot. What else do I use? Tumblr for looking at Tumblr. Instapaper. Pretty straight up Comixology, mostly, obviously for reading comics. And then I've got lots of other apps that, I use less, but those are some of the biggies.
Right. See that.
What do you think? Any opinions on those? You got thoughts?
No, that's pretty much what I expected, I guess. I figured you were going to mention Comixology sooner, to be honest. But
well, I mean, it's it's a platform. It's you can only read Comixology comics, in the app or on the website. So that's it's not even just having a preference. Also, I mean, and this is not a slam. Comixology also does white label versions of their app for everybody, like Marvel, DC, Image. Pretty much everybody gets their DRM comics software made by Comixology. So it's you'll see it. You go, that DC Comics app looks a lot like Comixology. Well, it is with a different skin on it. But for reading like CBRs and CBZs, I like if you know comic stuff at all.
Yeah.
If you don't worry. But I like Chunky Comic Reader, and I like Comic Zeal, I think it's called.
Oh, okay, cool. See, I actually want to know that because I'm not that into American comics, but a show I do in Slovene, we did a whole comic strip episode, and we did a bunch of European stuff and some American old school stuff from the 60s, and I've been reading those now. So I need.
I would try Chunky. Yeah, if you're at least on iOS, it sounds like you're on Android, but
yeah, most of the time. But yeah. Okay, Merlin. Then my last question, and then I'll let you go. If you had to pick one physical object, like from your past, or you still might own it, that made an impact on your life, what would that be?
Oh, God.
I know, man. I know. Just bear with me.
No, it's a great question. It's just hard. I don't know what the answer is.
I know, yeah.
One physical object. Probably the black and white TV my family had when I was a child.
Fair enough.
Because I watched it so much. I mean, whether I'm happy about that or proud of that, I won't say. But like that was my best friend as a kid. I watched so much TV when I was a little kid. I still have like a weirdly, even with my fading memory in my convalescing years, I still have such an encyclopedic knowledge of so many things about TV. It's uncanny.
I'm
like a latchkey
yeah.
kid. I don't know if you have that term there, latchkey kid, like somebody who's alone at home after school. Like take a latchkey kid who's kind of smart, but like likes reading almanacs and encyclopedias, combined with a TV. Like, oh my God! So I still know a lot of things that happened on TV 40 years ago.
Merlin, that's pretty much it, man. That's all I have.
Thanks for having me on. It's a lot of fun.
I still don't know why you guys say yes to when I ask, but thank you, like from the bottom of my heart, because I'm just some dude in Slovenia. That's why I tell everybody.
I'm just some dude in America, man. It's nice. It's nice to talk to you, and you're nice to ask. Don't be that way. It's very nice of you to ask, and it was my honor to be on. You had some good questions, and you look nice today, so nothing wrong with that.
Tole je bila 63. epizoda Aparatusa. Mene najdete na Twitterju pod afnaanzet, Merlin pa je na Twitterju hotdogsladies. Ja, pač je ena zgodba za te, ampak to pač je na netu. Ima tudi svojo spletno stran merlinman2n.com. Feedbacka sem vedno vesel, tako da če hočete mi lahko pošljete mail na anzeafnaaparatus.si oziroma mi težite na Twitterju. Predvsem pa še enkrat hvala vsem, ki ste že donirali Aparatus. Res vsak evro ful prav pride, ker se pač probamo čim več truditi z vsemi oddajami, ki jih delamo. Tako da, če imate šanso, lahko podprete Aparatus na aparatus.si/podpri. To je do naslednjega tedna to. Hvala, ki ste poslušali. Čau.